What types of bad parenting do kids not recover from? The call came at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as I was reviewing my notes for Wednesday's session with Marcus, an 8-year-old whose mother screamed at him daily for being stupid and worthless. The irony wasn't lost on me when I saw the contact name flashing on my screen, Linda Morrison, mother. I hadn't spoken to her in 14 months. Jessica, honey, I need your help. Her voice was smaller than I remembered, stripped of its usual commanding tone. There's been a situation at work. Some parents have made accusations, and... What kind of accusations? I set down Marcus's file, my therapist training kicking in automatically. Neutral tone. Open-ended questions. Though my hands were already shaking. Psychological abuse, they're calling it. Can you believe that? Me, who dedicated 32 years to Riverside Elementary. They're saying I damaged children, that I was too harsh, too critical. She paused, and I could hear her breathing, shallow and quick. The school board is meeting Friday. They're talking about termination, stripping my pension, maybe even criminal charges. I stared at my diplomas on the wall, my master's in clinical psychology, my certification in child trauma therapy. Credentials I'd earned despite her voice echoing in my head through every exam. You're too sensitive for graduate school. You'll never handle the pressure. You're setting yourself up for failure. What do you want from me, Linda? Don't call me Linda. I'm still your mother. The sharpness returned briefly, that familiar edge that used to make my stomach clench. I need you to write a letter. A professional statement about what kind of person I am, what kind of mother I was. You turned out fine, you're successful, you help people. Doesn't that prove I wasn't this monster they're making me out to be? I walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the October darkness. In my practice, I saw kids like me every week. Kids who apologized for existing, who jumped at raised voices, who believed they were fundamentally flawed. Kids whose parents told them they were too dramatic when they cried, too needy when they asked for comfort, too much when they expressed any emotion at all. The parents who made the complaint, I said carefully, what specifically are they alleging? Oh, ridiculous things. That I told one child she was stupid for not understanding math, which I never said, by the way. That I made another boy stand in front of the class while I listed everything wrong with his project. That I called parents to tell them their children were lost causes if they didn't shape up. Her voice grew indignant. These are teaching methods, Jessica. Sometimes children need to hear hard truths. That's how you build character. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window, hollow-eyed and pale. I looked exactly like I had at 7, sitting at our kitchen table while she stood over me, voice dripping with disdain. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. You're being dramatic again. Normal children don't need this much attention. I need an answer by Thursday, she continued. The letter has to be submitted before the hearing. You're a respected therapist now, your word carries weight. You can save my career, honey. You can save your mother. The line went quiet except for her expectant breathing. 32 years at Riverside Elementary. Hundreds of children who'd sat in her classroom, small and vulnerable, absorbing her words like gospel. Just like I had. I need to think about it, I said finally. Think about what? I'm your mother, Jessica. After everything I sacrificed to raise you. I hung up. My hands were trembling as I poured myself a glass of wine, then set it down untouched. Instead, I found myself pulling out Marcus's file again, reading my notes from our last session. Asterisk client exhibits hypervigilance around adult approval. Apologized 6 times during intake for bothering me. When asked to draw his family, drew himself very small in the corner asterisk. The parallels were suffocating. I'd started therapy myself at 24, finally able to afford it on my graduate assistant stipend. Dr. Patricia Reeves had been patient as I insisted for months that my childhood was normal and I was just overly sensitive. It took 8 sessions before I could say the words out loud. I think my mother might have been emotionally abusive. Even then, I'd immediately backtracked. But she never hit me. She worked hard to provide for us after Dad left. She pushed me because she wanted me to succeed. Dr. Reeves had nodded thoughtfully. Tell me about a typical day when you were, say, 10 years old. The memories came flooding back with startling clarity. Getting a B+ on a spelling test and having Linda tear it up, telling me it was mediocre work from a mediocre child. Asking for help with homework and being told I was clingy and needed to figure things out like normal kids do. Coming home excited about making the school play and watching her face crumble with disappointment. Drama club? I suppose if you can't excel at anything important, you might as well play pretend. By Thursday morning, I'd made my decision. Then my phone rang. Dr. Morrison? This is Sarah Chin. I'm a parent at Riverside Elementary, and I heard through the parent network that you might be Linda Morrison's daughter. The therapist? My stomach dropped. I can't discuss. Please, just listen. My daughter Emma is 7. She's been having nightmares since September, wetting the bed, refusing to go to school. Finally, she told us what's been happening in Mrs. Morrison's classroom. Sarah's voice cracked. Emma said she feels stupid and bad all the time now. That Mrs. Morrison tells her she's disappointing and will probably fail 2nd grade if she doesn't stop being so slow. I closed my eyes, seeing myself at 7, curled up in bed whispering I'm sorry to the darkness. Yesterday, Emma asked me if I still loved her even though she was broken, Sarah continued. A 7-year-old asked me that. Dr. Morrison, I know this puts you in an impossible position, but I had to call. There are 12 families involved now. 12 children who are showing signs of trauma. After she hung up, I sat in my office staring at the blank document on my laptop screen. The letter I was supposed to write. The letter that could save Linda's career and pension, that could allow her to continue teaching, continue shaping young minds. I thought about Emma Chen, about Marcus, about all my clients who carry their parents' voices like poison in their bloodstream. Then I thought about Linda's words from Tuesday night, asterisk sometimes children need to hear hard truths. That's how you build character, asterisk. At 3:17 p.m., I started typing. But it wasn't the letter Linda had asked for. Instead, I opened a new email to Dr. Patricia Reeves, my old therapist, now a respected expert witness in child psychology cases. Patricia, I wrote, asterisk I need your advice on an ethical situation. And I think I'm ready to tell the truth about my childhood, asterisk. Dr. Patricia Reeves called me back within 2 hours, her familiar voice immediately grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. Jessica, I'm glad you reached out. Before we discuss the ethical implications, I need to ask, how are you holding up? This must be incredibly triggering. I found myself laughing, though it came out hollow. You know what's strange? I keep switching between feeling like that scared little kid who just wanted her approval, and feeling like I have this power I never thought I'd have. She needs me now. That's not strange at all. It's actually quite normal for adult children in your situation. Patricia paused, and I could picture her in her office with the soft gray walls and a tissue box strategically placed on the side table. Tell me what you're thinking about the case itself. I walked her through everything: Linda's call, Sarah Chen's heartbreaking description of Emma, the 12 families now coming forward. As I spoke, more details from my own childhood kept surfacing, memories I buried so deep I'd convinced myself they were normal. She used to make me stand in front of the bathroom mirror and list everything I'd done wrong that day, I heard myself saying. Called it accountability time. If I couldn't come up with at least 5 things, she'd add lying to the list and make me start over. How old were you when this started? 6, maybe 7? It lasted until I was about 12 and got tall enough that the mirror thing felt ridiculous. I pressed my fingers against my temples, fighting the familiar headache that came with these memories. Patricia, Sarah Chen said her daughter asked if she still loved her even though she was broken. I remember asking Linda the exact same thing when I was 8. She told me that love had to be earned, and I hadn't earned it yet. The silence stretched between us, heavy with recognition. Jessica, I'm going to ask you something difficult. If Linda weren't your mother, if she were just another perpetrator whose case crossed your desk, what would your professional opinion be? The answer came immediately, clear and unflinching. That she's a danger to children. That her behavior follows a classic pattern of psychological abuse designed to maintain control through fear and shame. That children exposed to her methods will likely struggle with self-worth, anxiety, and relationship issues for years, possibly decades. And personally? What does the little girl inside you need right now? I sank into my couch, pulling a throw pillow against my chest. She needs someone to finally say it was real. That it mattered. That she didn't deserve it. My voice cracked. And she's terrified that if I don't help Linda, if I actually speak against her, I'll be the bad guy. The ungrateful daughter who destroyed her own mother. Jessica, I want you to know that I've been following the research on cases like this. There are now 47 peer-reviewed studies showing the long-term impacts of psychological abuse in educational settings. The damage is measurable, treatable, but absolutely real. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my father. Robert Morrison had remarried when I was 15, moved to Phoenix, and we'd maintained a polite but distant relationship. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Jesse? Everything okay? I filled him in on Linda's situation, watching his reaction through the video call. His face grew increasingly grim. Your mother called me yesterday, he said finally. Asked if I'd write a character reference. Said you were being difficult about helping her. What did you tell her? He ran a hand through his graying hair. I told her I'd need to think about it. But honestly? Jesse, I should have fought harder for custody when we divorced. I knew she was intense with you. I told myself it was just her way, that she meant well. Dad. No, let me finish. I failed you. I left you with her because it was easier, because fighting Linda was exhausting, and I've regretted it every day for 20 years. His voice grew stronger. Whatever you decide to do about this school situation, you have my support. Complete support. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and stared at the cursor blinking on the empty page. Tomorrow was Friday. The school board meeting was at 7 p.m. I had less than 18 hours to decide whether to save my mother or save the children she was hurting. The phone rang again. Linda's name flashed on the screen. This time, I answered. Where's my letter, Jessica? Linda's voice was sharp, cutting through the phone like a blade. The board meeting is in 22 hours. I've been thinking about what you said. About building character through hard truths. I kept my voice steady, clinical. I'm curious about your teaching philosophy. What does that have to do with anything? I need that letter. Humor me. When a child struggles in your classroom, what's your first instinct? She sighed, impatient. To correct them, obviously. Children need structure, clear expectations. If little Emma Chen can't handle direct feedback about her math skills, how will she survive in the real world? I'm preparing these children for life, not coddling them like their helicopter parents do. My stomach clenched. She'd used Emma's name so casually, like she was discussing a broken toy instead of a 7-year-old having nightmares. And if that direct feedback makes them cry? Then they learn emotional regulation. Jessica, you used to cry over everything, homework, chores, when I asked you to clean your room. Look at you now. You're tough, successful. That didn't happen by accident. I walked to my bathroom, staring at the mirror where I gave myself daily affirmations Dr. Reeves had taught me. The same mirror where Linda used to make me recite my failures. Mom, do you remember accountability time? Silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. I remember teaching you responsibility. Self-reflection. Skills that clearly served you well. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror, listing everything I'd done wrong that day. Having to come up with at least 5 things, or you'd call me a liar. That's not, you're misremembering. Children often distort memories, especially when they're under stress. Her voice took on that familiar patronizing tone. This is exactly why I need your professional letter. You're letting current emotions cloud your judgment about the past. The gaslighting was so smooth, so automatic, I almost found myself doubting my own recollections. Almost. What about the time I made honor roll in 6th grade? Another pause. You've always been academically capable when you applied yourself. You told me honor roll was participation trophy nonsense and that I shouldn't get a big head over meeting basic expectations. I found the certificate last year when I cleaned out my storage unit. I'd hidden it under my mattress because I was ashamed of being proud of it. Jessica, you're clearly having some kind of breakdown. This is exactly what I warned you about. Psychology makes people dwell on negativity, creates problems where none existed. Maybe you should talk to someone. The irony was staggering. I did talk to someone. For 4 years. Behind my back? Telling strangers private family business? Learning that what happened to me wasn't normal. That children deserve emotional safety. What happened to you? Her voice rose, genuinely incredulous. You lived in a clean house, had food on the table, got driven to school every day. I worked 60-hour weeks to provide for us after your father abandoned us. I sacrificed everything for you. I know you worked hard financially. Financially? I gave you everything. Structure, discipline, high standards. Do you know how many parents would kill for a child who turned out as successful as you? And this is the gratitude I get? My call waiting beeped. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, then saw it was a local area code. Mom, I have another call coming in. We'll finish this later. Jessica, don't you dare. I clicked over. Hello? Dr. Morrison? This is David Park. My son Michael is in Mrs. Morrison's class. The man's voice was thick with emotion. I just got off the phone with Emma Chen's mother. She said you might be able to help us understand what our kids are going through. My heart sank. Mr. Park, I can't discuss. Please. Michael stopped eating lunch 3 weeks ago. Says he doesn't deserve food when he gets math problems wrong because Mrs. Morrison told him greedy children who can't learn don't get rewards. He's 8 years old and he's trying to starve himself because he thinks he's stupid. The room spun. I gripped the phone tighter. Mr. Park, has Michael seen a counselor? We have an appointment Monday, but the waiting list for child therapists is 6 weeks out. Dr. Morrison, I know this is your mother we're talking about, but Michael drew a picture yesterday of himself with X's for eyes and the words bad boy written across his chest. 8 years old. After he hung up, I sat in the darkness of my living room, not bothering to turn on lights. Linda called back immediately, and I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again. And again. Finally, I answered. How could you hang up on me during the most important conversation of my life? Tell me about Michael Park, I said quietly. Who? Michael Park. 8-year-old boy in your class. Stopped eating lunch. Oh, the Park boy. Dramatic child, probably gets it from his father. Uses tears to manipulate instead of doing the work. I've seen it 1,000 times. He's 8, Mom. And? 8 is old enough to learn that actions have consequences. I'm not running a daycare, Jessica. I'm preparing these children for reality. I closed my eyes, finally understanding with crystal clarity what I had to do. I'll write the letter, I said quietly. The relief in Linda's voice was immediate and overwhelming. Oh, thank God, Jessica. I knew you'd come through. You understand that. But I need to interview you first. For authenticity. The school board will expect specific examples of your positive impact on children. Of course, whatever you need. When? Now. While it's fresh. I grabbed a notepad, my hands surprisingly steady. Tell me about your most challenging student this year. How did you help them improve? Well, there's the Rodriguez girl. Sophia. Came in barely speaking English, way behind academically. Parents clearly not involved. How did you support her? I paired her with stronger students for group work, gave her extra worksheets to practice at home. But she kept making the same mistakes over and over. So I started having her stand at the board to work through problems in front of the class. My pen stopped moving. In front of the whole class? Peer learning is very effective. The other children could see her mistakes and avoid them. And Sophia learned that errors have social consequences. That's important preparation for the workforce. How did Sophia respond to this approach? Initially some tears, but children adapt. She's more careful with her work now. I wrote down every word, my therapist training automatically cataloging the red flags. Public humiliation as motivation. Weaponizing peer pressure against a vulnerable child. Characterizing a normal emotional response to shame as manipulation. What about positive reinforcement strategies? I don't believe in participation trophies, if that's what you're asking. Real confidence comes from genuine achievement, not artificial praise. Can you give me an example of a time you praised a student this year? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Jessica, praise has to be earned. These children are already overindulged at home, they need someone who holds them to actual standards. So you haven't praised any of your students this year? I've acknowledged satisfactory work when it meets expectations. That's appropriate recognition. I flipped to a new page, my writing faster now. Tell me about your classroom management techniques. Clear rules, consistent enforcement. Children need to understand that disrespect has immediate consequences. What constitutes disrespect? Talking back, questioning instructions, crying during lessons, asking for help repeatedly on concepts they should grasp. Making excuses for poor performance. And the consequences? Time out at their desk with a reflection sheet. Writing sentences about appropriate classroom behavior. For repeated offenses, I call parents to discuss the child's attitude problems. My blood chilled. What do you tell the parents? The truth. That their child is disruptive, unmotivated, or struggling with basic concepts that other children master easily. Parents need to understand where their child ranks compared to peers. I set down my pen. Every word she'd spoken was a textbook example of psychological abuse. The public shaming, the deliberate undermining of self-worth, the weaponizing of parental relationships against children. Mom, when you call parents to say their child is struggling more than others, how do you think that makes the child feel? Motivated to improve. Jessica, what kind of questions are these? I thought you were writing a character letter. I am. My voice came out steadier than I felt. One more thing. If you could change anything about your teaching approach, what would it be? Honestly? I'd have more administrative support for discipline. These soft modern policies tie teachers' hands. In my day, we could really shape character without worrying about hurting feelings. More discipline. Less concern about feelings. Exactly. You understand, that's how I raised you, and look how well you turned out. After we hung up, I sat staring at my notes for 20 minutes. Then I opened my laptop and began typing 2 letters. The first was addressed to the Riverside Elementary School Board. The second was my formal resignation from any obligation to protect the woman who'd spent my childhood teaching me I was fundamentally flawed. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda, asterisk, thank you for doing the right thing, honey. I knew I could count on you, asterisk. She had no idea how right she was. At 11:43 p.m., I finished the first letter and printed it out. 27 pages of clinical assessment, case studies, and professional analysis. Every paragraph carefully documented Linda's own words from our interview, cross-referenced with established psychological research on educational trauma. I'd used her exact quotes. Asterisk, real competence comes from genuine achievement, not artificial praise. Asterisk, asterisk, children need to understand that errors have social consequences. Asterisk, asterisk, I'd have more administrative support for discipline. We could really shape character without worrying about hurting feelings. Asterisk. The second letter was shorter. 3 paragraphs explaining to the school board that I was Linda Morrison's daughter, that I'd been asked to provide character testimony, and that I could not in good conscience recommend her continued work with children based on both professional standards and personal experience. My phone had been buzzing with texts from Linda every 20 minutes. Asterisk 11:08 p.m. Hope you're getting good sleep before the big day tomorrow. Asterisk. Asterisk 11:31 p.m. Remember to mention my 32 years of dedicated service. Asterisk. Asterisk 11:47 p.m. Should I pick up coffee for us before we go to the board meeting together? Asterisk. The assumption that I'd be sitting beside her, supporting her, made my stomach turn. She'd already constructed the entire narrative in her mind, devoted mother and successful daughter, united against false accusations. At 6:17 a.m., my phone rang. Sarah Chen. Dr. Morrison, I'm so sorry to call this early. Emma didn't sleep again last night, and she just told me something that I think you need to hear. I was already reaching for my notepad. What is it? She said Mrs. Morrison has a special punishment called statue time. Children who ask too many questions or cry have to stand perfectly still at the front of the class while she teaches. If they move or make any sound, the whole class has to stay in from recess. Sarah's voice broke. Emma said she held her bladder for 2 hours during statue time on Tuesday because she was afraid the other kids would hate her if she had to use the bathroom. How long has this been happening? Since the first week of school. But Emma thought it was normal until she mentioned it to her older sister. Dr. Morrison, there's something else. Emma asked me what waste of space means. She said Mrs. Morrison whispers it when she walks by certain kids' desks. After Sarah hung up, I called Riverside Elementary's main office. This is Dr. Jessica Morrison. I need to speak with Principal Torres about the school board meeting tonight. Dr. Morrison, this is Janet from the office. Principal Torres has been hoping you'd call. Can you hold for just a moment? Principal Torres picked up immediately. Dr. Morrison, thank you so much for reaching out. I understand you'll be providing testimony tonight regarding Linda Morrison? That's correct. I have documentation I'd like to submit before the meeting. Of course. Given the sensitive nature of this case, would you be able to come in around 2 p.m.? We can review the materials privately. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked through the doors of Riverside Elementary for the first time since my own graduation 20 years ago. The hallways looked smaller, but the smell was identical, industrial cleaner and childhood anxiety. Principal Torres was a kind-faced woman in her 50s who immediately put me at ease. Dr. Morrison, I want you to know how much we appreciate your professional perspective on this situation. I handed her the first letter, my clinical assessment. I interviewed Linda Morrison last night under the pretense of gathering positive examples for a character reference. What I documented instead was a systematic pattern of psychological abuse. Principal Torres read in silence, her expression growing more troubled with each page. When she reached Linda's quote about wanting to shape character without worrying about hurting feelings, she looked up sharply. Dr. Morrison, this is exactly what the parents have been describing. The deliberate humiliation, the shame-based discipline. She flipped back to my analysis section. You've connected her methods to established research on educational trauma. Principal Torres, there's something else you should know. I took a deep breath. Linda Morrison is my mother. I was asked to provide character testimony in her defense. The principal set down the letter carefully. And instead, you're testifying against her. I'm testifying for the children. Including the child I used to be. Dr. Morrison, I have to ask, are you prepared for the personal cost of this decision? This will become public record. Through the office window, I could see Linda's empty classroom. Room 14B, where 12 children spent 6 hours a day learning that their worth was conditional, that their emotions were weaknesses, that mistakes made them burdens. The personal cost of staying silent is higher, I said. Those children deserve someone who will speak their truth. Principal Torres nodded slowly. The board meeting starts at 7 p.m. Given the nature of your testimony, we'll need to inform Mrs. Morrison's attorney that there's been a change in your position. She'll find out before tonight? She'll be notified by 4 p.m. that you'll be testifying for the district rather than in her defense. I looked at my phone. It was 2:47 p.m. In less than 90 minutes, Linda would discover that her own daughter had betrayed her. For the first time in my life, I was about to find out what Linda Morrison looked like when she truly lost control. At 3:52 p.m., my phone exploded. 17 missed calls from Linda in the span of 4 minutes. Then the texts started flooding in, each one more unhinged than the last. How dare you betray your own mother? After everything I sacrificed for you. You ungrateful, vindictive little brat. I should have known you'd side with strangers over family. You're dead to me. I turned off my phone and drove to Dr. Patricia Reeves' office. She'd agreed to meet me for an emergency session before the hearing. How are you holding up? Patricia asked as I settled into the familiar chair I hadn't sat in for 2 years. I keep waiting to feel guilty, I said, surprised by my own steadiness. But I don't. Is that normal? What do you feel instead? I considered this carefully. Protective. Like I finally had the power to shield other children from what I went through. I paused, sorting through the complex emotions. And relieved. Like I don't have to carry her secrets anymore. Jessica, I want to prepare you for what might happen tonight. When people like Linda face public exposure, they often escalate their behavior dramatically. She may try to manipulate you, guilt you, or even threaten you. As if summoned by her words, my phone, even on silent, lit up with another call from Linda. Then another. And another. She's called 43 times in the past hour, I said, showing Patricia the screen. Have you listened to any of the voicemails? I shook my head. I'm afraid to. Would it help if we listened to one together? Sometimes hearing their tactics in a safe environment can prepare you for the public confrontation. My hands trembled as I played the most recent voicemail on speaker. Linda's voice filled the room, saccharine sweet. Jessica, honey, I know you're upset about something, but we can work this out. Mother to daughter. I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. You're probably just having one of your episodes like when you were little. Remember how you used to get overwhelmed and confused? Come home tonight and we'll fix this together. I made your favorite cookies, the snickerdoodles. Everything can go back to normal if you just remember who really loves you. The voicemail ended with Linda sobbing, theatrical, performative tears that I recognized from every childhood drama. Classic manipulation, Patricia said matter-of-factly. Infantilization, false sympathy, and manufactured crisis. She's trying to pull you back into old patterns. The cookies, I said quietly. She made snickerdoodles exactly once when I was 12, after I caught her going through my diary and confronting her about it. She called it making amends but spent the whole time I was eating them explaining why she had the right to violate my privacy. Food as manipulation. Another classic technique. I played the second to last voicemail. Linda's tone had shifted completely. Fine, Jessica. If you want to destroy your own mother for attention, go ahead. But remember, I know things about you too. I know about your little breakdown in college, your anxiety medication, all those times you came crying to me about your failures. If you want to air our family business in public, I can tell them what kind of unstable, dramatic child you really were. See how that affects your precious therapy practice. The threats continued for another 90 seconds, Linda's voice growing more vicious with each word. When it ended, I realized I was gripping the arms of my chair so tightly my knuckles had gone white. There's the real Linda, Patricia said calmly. When love bombing doesn't work, they move to intimidation. She's going to try to destroy my career. She's going to try. But Jessica, you have something now that you didn't have as a child, credibility, professional standing, and most importantly, the truth documented in your own words. At 6:30 p.m., I stood in the parking lot of Riverside Elementary, watching parents stream into the building for the emergency school board meeting. Sarah Chen spotted me and waved, walking over with what I assumed was Emma's father. Dr. Morrison, thank you, she said simply. Whatever you're planning to say tonight, thank you for listening to us. Through the school's windows, I could see Linda in the hallway, pacing back and forth like a caged animal, her attorney beside her gesturing frantically. She spotted me in the parking lot and our eyes met through the glass. Her expression was pure hatred. The school board meeting room buzzed with nervous energy as I took my seat in the designated witness area. Linda sat 3 rows ahead with her attorney, her back rigid, silver hair pulled into her signature tight bun. She hadn't turned around since I'd entered, but I could see her shoulders trembling with barely contained fury. Board President Margaret Walsh called the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. We're here tonight to address allegations of psychological misconduct against Mrs. Linda Morrison, a 32-year veteran of our district. We'll hear testimony from affected families, expert witnesses, and character references before making our determination. The first hour was devastating. Parent after parent stood up, voice shaking, describing children who'd stopped sleeping, stopped eating, started having panic attacks. Michael Park's father showed the board his son's drawing, stick figures with X's for eyes labeled stupid kids who don't deserve food. Emma Chan's mother played a recording of her daughter apologizing to the mirror for being a bad girl who asked too many questions. Through it all, Linda sat motionless, occasionally whispering to her attorney. But I caught her reflection in the window behind the board table. Her face was a mask of disdain, lips curled in the same contemptuous smile I remembered from childhood when she thought no one was watching. At 8:17 p.m., Principal Torres announced, "We'll now hear from Dr. Jessica Morrison, licensed clinical psychologist specializing in childhood trauma." The room fell silent. Linda's attorney shot to his feet. Board President, Dr. Morrison is the defendant's daughter and was originally scheduled to provide character testimony in Mrs. Morrison's defense. This last-minute switch is highly irregular. Dr. Morrison disclosed her relationship to the defendant when she submitted her testimony, Margaret Walsh replied. She'll be speaking in her professional capacity. Please proceed, Doctor. I stood, my legs surprisingly steady. As I walked to the podium, Linda finally turned around. Her eyes were blazing, mouth twisted in a snarl that would have sent 7-year-old me running from my bedroom to hide. Instead, I looked directly at her and began to speak. My name is Dr. Jessica Morrison. I hold a master's degree in clinical psychology and am certified in childhood trauma therapy. I've treated over 200 children in the past 6 years. I opened my folder, hands calm now. 3 days ago, Linda Morrison, my mother, asked me to write a character reference for tonight's hearing. Instead, I conducted a clinical interview with her about her teaching methods. I read Linda's exact quotes from our phone conversation, watching board members' faces grow increasingly horrified. When I reached her statement about wanting to shape character without worrying about hurting feelings, board member Patricia Santos audibly gasped. Based on this interview and my professional training, I can state unequivocally that Mrs. Morrison's methods constitute systematic psychological abuse designed to maintain control through fear and shame, I continued. The symptoms described by parents tonight, nightmares, regression, self-harm ideation in elementary-age children, are consistent with trauma responses I see in my clinical practice. Linda's attorney objected twice, but I pressed on, my voice growing stronger with each word. I'm here tonight not as Linda Morrison's daughter, but as an advocate for the children in her classroom. Children like Emma Chan, who's learning to hate herself at age 7. Children like Michael Park, who's trying to earn love through self-starvation. Children like Sophia Rodriguez, who's being publicly humiliated for the crime of learning English as her second language. I paused, looking directly at Linda again. Her face had gone ashen, but her eyes still burned with rage. And children like I was 20 years ago, sitting in a classroom just down the hall, learning that my worth was conditional and my emotions were weaknesses. My voice cracked slightly. The difference is, these children have parents who believe them. Who fight for them. Who won't let them suffer in silence. The room was dead quiet except for the sound of someone crying softly in the back row. Mrs. Morrison asked me to testify that she wasn't that bad and that I turned out fine. But turning out functional despite psychological abuse isn't the same as turning out fine because of good parenting. It took me 4 years of therapy to understand the difference. I closed my folder and looked at each board member in turn. 12 families have entrusted you with protecting their children. I'm asking you to listen to them and to the child I used to be. As I returned to my seat, Linda's whispered voice carried across the silent room. You'll regret this for the rest of your life, Jessica. I promise you that. The board recessed for deliberation at 9:23 p.m., and I found myself alone in the hallway outside the meeting room. Most of the parents had gone home to their children, promising to call each other as soon as the decision was announced. Through the glass doors, I could see the 5 board members huddled around a conference table, Principal Torres pointing to sections of my written testimony. 34 years. I turned to find Linda standing 10 feet away, her attorney nowhere in sight. Up close, she looked smaller than I remembered, frilier, with deep lines around her eyes that hadn't been there the last time I'd seen her. Excuse me? 34 years I spent raising you. Putting food on your table, clothes on your back, driving you to every school event you ever participated in. She stepped closer, and I instinctively backed against the wall. And this is how you repay me. This isn't about you and me, Linda. This is about those children. Don't call me Linda. Her voice echoed off the empty hallway walls. I'm your mother, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And those children are fine. Their parents are weak, raising a generation of snowflakes who can't handle the real world. The familiar words hit like muscle memory, and for a split second I felt myself shrinking back into that compliant little girl who just wanted the yelling to stop. But then I heard Emma Chen's voice from earlier. Emma asked me if I still loved her even though she was broken. Michael Park is 8 years old and he's starving himself because he thinks he doesn't deserve food, I said steadily. How is that fine? Michael Park is manipulative, just like his father. The whole family plays victim. Linda's face twisted with the same contempt I'd seen through the window. But you wouldn't know that because you've been listening to their sob stories instead of the woman who actually knows these children. I listened to you too. For 47 minutes on Thursday night, while you described your teaching methods in detail. I was tired, upset. You trapped me, Jessica. Got me to say things out of context so you could twist them into some kind of evidence. The meeting room doors opened and Margaret Walsh stepped out, scanning the hallway. When she spotted us, her expression grew concerned. Dr. Morrison, Mrs. Morrison, we're ready to announce our decision. If you could please return to the meeting room. Linda smoothed her hair and straightened her blazer, composing herself with practiced precision. Of course, Margaret. Jessica and I were just having a little family chat. She looked at me with eyes like ice chips. Weren't we, honey? Inside the meeting room, the remaining parents quickly took their seats. Sarah and David Chin sat in the front row, holding hands so tightly their knuckles were white. Behind them, the Parks, the Rodriguez family, and 8 other parents whose children had been trapped in Linda's classroom since September. Margaret Walsh cleared her throat. After reviewing all testimony and documentation presented tonight, the Riverside Elementary School Board has reached a unanimous decision regarding Mrs. Linda Morrison's employment status. Linda sat perfectly straight, hands folded in her lap like she was posing for a photograph. I could see her jaw clenching rhythmically. Effective immediately, Mrs. Linda Morrison is terminated from her position as a second-grade teacher at Riverside Elementary. Furthermore, the board will be forwarding our findings to the State Education Department with a recommendation that Mrs. Morrison's teaching license be permanently revoked. The sound that escaped Linda's throat was barely human, part gasp, part wail. Her attorney grabbed her arm as she started to rise from her chair. Additionally, Margaret continued, the board will be providing resources for professional counseling to any student who requests support in processing their classroom experiences. We deeply apologize to the affected families for not intervening sooner. Linda shook off her attorney's hand and stood up, turning to face the parents behind her. You've destroyed an innocent woman's life based on lies from spoiled children who can't handle discipline. 32 years of dedicated service, and this is what I get. Her voice rose to a shriek. Your children will fail in the real world because you've taught them that tears and tantrums get them whatever they want. Mrs. Morrison, please, Margaret Walsh began. But Linda wasn't done. She spun around to face me, her composure completely shattered. And you. You vindictive, ungrateful little snake. I should have known you'd grow up to be just like your father, weak, disloyal, selfish. You think destroying me makes you some kind of hero? David Park stood up slowly. Mrs. Morrison, my son drew a picture of himself with X's for eyes because of what you did to his self-worth. The only person who destroyed anything here is you. Linda's face went purple with rage. Your son is a pathetic, whining. That's enough. Margaret Walsh's voice cut through the room like a gavel. Mrs. Morrison, you need to leave the premises immediately, or we'll call security. As Linda gathered her things with shaking hands, she looked at me one last time. This isn't over, Jessica. You have no idea what you've just done to your own family. The thread hung in the air as she stalked out, her heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. Through the windows, I watched her cross the parking lot, get into her silver Honda, and sit there for 5 full minutes before starting the engine. When she finally drove away, Sarah Chin turned to me with tears in her eyes. Dr. Morrison, Emma's going to sleep better tonight knowing Mrs. Morrison can't hurt any more children. Thank you for choosing them over, she paused, looking uncomfortable. Over my mother, I finished for her. Sarah, I chose the truth. And the truth is that children deserve better than what Linda Morrison was giving them. As the families filed out, making plans for playdates and promising to stay in touch, I realized something had fundamentally shifted inside me. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to Linda Morrison and won. But as I walked to my car alone, Linda's final words echoed in my mind, this isn't over. She was right about that. The next morning, I woke to find my practice's voicemail box completely full. 47 messages, all from the same blocked number, all timestamped between 2:17 a.m. and 5:43 a.m. Linda's voice ranged from tearful pleading to venomous threats, sometimes switching mid-sentence. Jessica, please call me back. We can fix this, click. You think you're so smart with your fancy degree, but I know who you really are, click. I'm going to tell everyone about your breakdown in college, about how you couldn't handle, click. I deleted them all without listening to the full recordings, but my hands were shaking as I made coffee. Through my kitchen window, I could see a silver Honda parked across the street. Linda's car, idling at the curb like she'd been there all night. At 8:15 a.m., my first client of the day arrived, Marcus, the 8-year-old whose mother screamed at him for being stupid. As his father walked him to my office door, Marcus suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. Dr. Jessica, why is that angry lady staring at us? I looked out the front window. Linda was now standing beside her car, arms crossed, glaring directly at my office building. When she saw me looking, she raised her phone and appeared to be taking pictures. Marcus, let's go in through the back entrance today, I said quickly, guiding him and his father around the building. But I could feel Linda's eyes following us the entire time. During our session, Marcus was more agitated than usual, unable to focus on our usual art therapy activities. The angry lady looked like my mommy when she's about to yell, he said, carefully arranging toy figures on the table. Is she mad at you like mommy gets mad at me? Sometimes adults get upset when things don't go the way they want, I explained, watching him place the smallest figure, always representing himself, far away from the others. But that's not your problem to worry about, okay? After Marcus left, I called building security. This is Dr. Morrison in suite 304. There's someone loitering in the parking lot who's making my clients uncomfortable. We'll send someone out to check, document. Can you describe the individual? Before I could answer, my office phone rang. My receptionist Kelly's voice came through the intercom, sounding stressed. Dr. Morrison? There's a Linda Morrison here demanding to see you. She says she's your mother and it's an emergency. She's pretty upset. Tell her I'm with a client and can't be disturbed. If she refuses to leave, call the police. Through my office door, I could hear Linda's voice rising in the waiting area. I know she's in there. Jessica, stop hiding from me like a coward. We need to talk about the lies you told last night. Kelly's response was firm but professional. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. Dr. Morrison has no appointments available today. Appointments? I'm her mother. I don't need an appointment to speak to my own daughter. The commotion continued for another 10 minutes before I heard the outer door slam shut. Kelly knocked on my office door. She's gone, but she said she'd be back. Dr. Morrison, should I be worried about this? I looked at Kelly, 24 years old, earnest, working her way through graduate school. She didn't deserve to be caught in Linda's crossfire. Kelly, I need you to update our security protocols. No one gets access to this office without a scheduled appointment, regardless of their claimed relationship to me. And if Linda Morrison returns, call the police immediately. At lunch, I drove to the grocery store and found Linda waiting by my car when I came out, arms full of bags. She looked haggard, like she hadn't slept, her usually perfect hair disheveled. Avoiding me won't make this go away, Jessica. I'm not avoiding you. I'm protecting my clients from harassment. I clicked my key fob, but Linda stepped between me and the driver's door. Those people destroyed my career based on your lies. 32 years of service, gone. My pension, my reputation, everything. Her voice cracked, and for a moment she looked genuinely vulnerable. I raised you better than this. You didn't raise me, Linda. You controlled me. There's a difference. I gave you structure. Discipline. Look at yourself, successful, educated, helping people. That didn't happen by accident. You're right. It happened despite you, not because of you. I set my grocery bags on the ground, finally facing her fully. And it happened because I learned to recognize the difference between love and control. Linda's face hardened again. Fine. If you want to play games, Jessica, I can play games too. I've already called 3 of your former professors at the university. Asked them some very interesting questions about your mental health history. My blood turned cold. What kind of questions? About your anxiety medication. About that semester you took medical leave. About how you used to have panic attacks during exams. She smiled, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen. Funny how people start remembering details when you express concern about a former student's current stability. Linda, you need to stop. I also drove by your little condo this morning. Nice neighborhood. I'm sure your neighbors would love to know what kind of person really lives next door. The kind who destroys her own mother's life for attention. The parking lot seemed to tilt around me. She was going to systematically dismantle everything I built, just like she threatened. My practice, my reputation, my sense of safety, all of it was now fair game in Linda's war against the truth. I'll give you until Monday to fix this, she continued, stepping closer. Call the school board, tell them you were having a psychological episode, that you misremembered things. Tell them I was a good mother and you were confused. And if I don't? Linda's smile widened. Then you'll find out exactly how far I'm willing to go to protect what's left of my life. She walked away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot, finally understanding that defeating Linda Morrison in public had been the easy part. The real war was just beginning. That weekend, I didn't leave my condo. Linda's silver Honda appeared at random intervals, sometimes parked across the street, sometimes slowly cruising past my building. She was making sure I knew she was watching, waiting. On Sunday morning at 7:23 a.m., my doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole expecting to see Linda, but instead found Mrs. Chen holding a casserole dish, her face etched with concern. Dr. Morrison, I hope I'm not intruding. Emma wanted me to bring you this. She held up what appeared to be a handmade card covered in crayon drawings. She drew you as a superhero. I opened the door, genuinely touched. Sarah, you didn't need to. Actually, I did need to. Her expression grew serious. There's a woman who's been calling parents from our school, asking questions about you. She claims to be conducting a wellness check on behalf of your practice. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? Whether we think you seemed stable during your testimony. Whether you appeared to be under the influence of anything. Whether we noticed any erratic behavior. Sarah stepped inside, lowering her voice. Dr. Morrison, she's trying to discredit you by making parents doubt your mental state. I sank onto my couch, Emma's card clutched in my hands. The drawing showed a stick figure with long hair and a cape, standing protectively in front of a group of smaller figures labeled kids. 3 families have called me since Friday night, Sarah continued. She told the Rodriguezes that you have a history of making false accusations against authority figures. She told Michael Park's parents that you were recently hospitalized for a nervous breakdown. None of that is true. We know that. But Dr. Morrison, she's methodical about this. She has details. She mentioned your college medical leave, some medication you took years ago. Where would she get that information? I thought about Linda's threat in the parking lot, her calls to my former professors. She's been researching me, trying to build a case that I'm unstable. The parents aren't buying it, if that helps. David Park said she sounded unhinged and desperate, like someone trying to deflect blame. Sarah sat beside me on the couch. But I'm worried about what else she might try. After Sarah left, I called Dr. Patricia Rees again, explaining Linda's escalating behavior. Patricia listened quietly, occasionally asking for specific details about the timeline and tactics. Jessica, what you're describing is a textbook smear campaign. It's what narcissists do when public exposure threatens their carefully constructed image. They try to destroy the credibility of anyone who challenges their narrative. She knows things about my mental health history that she shouldn't have access to. HIPAA violations, academic records that should be confidential. Unfortunately, determined people can often find ways around privacy protections, especially when they're targeting family members. But Jessica, her desperation is actually encouraging. How is this encouraging? Because it means your testimony was effective. She wouldn't be working this hard to discredit you if your words hadn't carried weight. Patricia paused. However, I'm concerned about her escalating surveillance. Have you considered filing a restraining order? With what evidence? She hasn't technically threatened me directly. Harassment doesn't require direct threats. Following you, contacting your colleagues, showing up at your workplace, that's stalking behavior. That afternoon, I drove to the police station. Officer Martinez listened to my complaint with professional sympathy, taking notes as I described Linda's behavior since Friday night. Dr. Morrison, what you're describing could qualify for a harassment complaint, but I have to be honest, family disputes are complicated legally. Has she made any direct threats of physical harm? She said I'd find out exactly how far she's willing to go. That felt threatening. It's vague, though. A defense attorney could argue it wasn't a specific threat. Officer Martinez closed his notepad. Here's what I can do. I'll drive by your building a few extra times this week, and I'll document this complaint so there's a paper trail if her behavior escalates. But for a restraining order, you'd probably need more concrete evidence. Driving home, I noticed Linda's Honda following 3 car lengths behind me. When I turned left, she turned left. When I stopped at Target to pick up groceries, she parked in the same lot. She was no longer hiding her surveillance, she wanted me to feel hunted. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, your neighbors are very chatty when you ask the right questions. Did you know Mrs. Patterson from 4B remembers you having episodes during your residency? Interesting what people recall when prompted. L asterisk. Linda had been canvassing my building, talking to neighbors, collecting ammunition. I realized with growing horror that she was systematically mapping my entire life, looking for vulnerabilities she could exploit. At 11:47 p.m., lying in bed and listening for footsteps in the hallway outside my door, I finally understood the full scope of what I was facing. This wasn't just about the school board hearing anymore. Linda Morrison was going to destroy me, piece by piece, unless I found a way to stop her first. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. On Monday morning, I arrived at my office to find Kelly talking quietly with a woman I didn't recognize, mid-40s, professionally dressed, holding a manila folder. Dr. Morrison, this is Rebecca Walsh. She says she needs to speak with you about Linda Morrison. My first instinct was suspicion. Are you a reporter? Because I'm not making any public statements. I'm a former teacher at Riverside Elementary, Rebecca interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. I worked in the classroom next to your mother's for 8 years. I need to tell you what I witnessed. In my office, Rebecca sat perched on the edge of her chair like she might bolt at any moment. I heard about the school board meeting, about your testimony. I've been wrestling with my conscience all weekend. What do you mean? She opened the manila folder, revealing a stack of handwritten notes. I documented Linda's behavior for years. Every incident I witnessed, every cruel comment I overheard, every child I saw come out of her classroom in tears. Her hands shook as she turned the pages. October 15, 2019, watched Linda make Jamie Rodriguez stand in front of class while she counted his spelling mistakes out loud. Child was visibly shaking. November 3, 2019, heard Linda tell Ashley Chen that smart children don't need to ask for help 3 times. My throat tightened. Rebecca, why didn't you report this? I tried. 3 times over 4 years. Filed complaints with Principal Torres' predecessor, with the district office, with the union. Every time, Linda found out somehow. She'd make my life hell, undermining me in meetings, spreading rumors about my teaching methods, getting parents to complain about my classroom management. Rebecca's voice cracked. She drove 2 other teachers out before me. Good teachers who couldn't handle her psychological warfare. I leaned forward, pieces clicking into place. That's why you left teaching? Linda Morrison destroyed my career systematically over 2 years. She convinced parents I was incompetent, got me written up for infractions she fabricated, made every workday a nightmare. Rebecca pulled out a thick folder. But I kept documentation of everything. Every email, every incident report, every witness statement I could collect. Rebecca, this could change everything about the case against her. There's more. She hesitated, then pulled out a small digital recorder. I started recording faculty meetings in 2020 after Linda publicly humiliated me about my lesson plans. I have hours of audio of her talking about students, Dr. Morrison. The way she describes children, it's disturbing. She pressed play. Linda's voice filled my office, crystal clear. The Patel boy is hopeless, below average intelligence, probably learning disabled. Parents are in denial about his limitations. Sometimes you have to break these kids down before you can build them up properly. My blood went cold. When was this recorded? March 2021. That hopeless child was 7 years old. Rebecca stopped the recording. There are dozens of these, Dr. Morrison. Linda talking about students like they're defective products instead of human beings. I sat back in my chair, mind racing. Rebecca, why bring this to me now? Why not the school board? Because Linda called me Saturday morning. Somehow got my new phone number in Portland. Rebecca's face went pale. She said she knew I'd been asking questions about the hearing, and that I should be very careful about involving myself in other people's business. She mentioned my new teaching job, my home address, my daughter's school. She threatened you? Not directly. But the message was clear: stay quiet or face consequences. Rebecca stood up abruptly. Dr. Morrison, I can't live with staying quiet anymore. Not when there are children involved. But I'm scared of what she'll do if she finds out I came to you. I thought about Linda's escalating surveillance, her systematic campaign to discredit me, her threats about how far she was willing to go. Rebecca, would you be willing to speak with the district attorney's office? This level of documentation, combined with the school board findings, might be enough for criminal charges. Criminal charges? Child psychological abuse is a felony in this state when committed by someone in a position of authority. And if Linda threatened you to obstruct justice? I paused, a plan forming. Rebecca, I think we can stop her. But I'm going to need you to trust me with something dangerous. She looked at me steadily. What do you need me to do? Call her back. Tell her you want to meet, that you're willing to keep quiet about what you witnessed in exchange for her leaving you alone. I picked up my phone, scrolling through contacts. But when you meet, you'll be wearing a wire. Rebecca's eyes widened. You want me to get her to confess? I want to get her on record threatening a witness. Making it clear this isn't just about past abuse, it's about ongoing criminal behavior. For the first time since she'd arrived, Rebecca smiled. Dr. Morrison, after 8 years of watching that woman hurt children and colleagues, nothing would give me more satisfaction than helping put her away. As Rebecca left with my attorney's contact information, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began: hope. Linda Morrison was about to discover that her systematic destruction of other people had created an army of witnesses ready to speak against her. And unlike the 7-year-old girl she'd once terrorized into silence, we weren't afraid of her anymore. The meeting with Rebecca and the district attorney was scheduled for Wednesday at 2 p.m., but Linda struck first. I woke up Tuesday morning to my phone buzzing incessantly. 12 missed calls from Kelly, 7 from Dr. Patricia Reeves, and 43 notifications from my practice's online review platform. My stomach sank as I opened the first review. Asterisk Dr. Jessica Morrison is completely unstable. She fabricated stories about her own mother to get attention and destroyed an innocent teacher's career. I witnessed her having a meltdown in the grocery store parking lot, screaming at an elderly woman. Would not trust her with my goldfish, let alone my child's mental health. Posted by Truth Teller 47 asterisk. The reviews kept coming, all posted between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., all following the same pattern. Different usernames, but the same writing style, the same specific details about my instability and attention-seeking behavior. Asterisk this woman has serious psychological problems. I heard from a reliable source that she was hospitalized for a breakdown in college and has been on psychiatric medication ever since. Posted by Concerned Parent 2023 asterisk. Asterisk Dr. Morrison told blatant lies about her mother at a school board meeting. The poor woman dedicated her life to education and this ungrateful daughter destroyed her out of spite. Very unprofessional and vindictive. Posted by Riverside resident asterisk. Kelly called as I was scrolling through the 15th fake review. Dr. Morrison, I'm so sorry to wake you, but we have a problem. These reviews started appearing around 2 a.m., and now the practice's rating has dropped from 4.8 stars to 2.1 stars. I've been trying to report them as fake, but the platform says they need to investigate each one individually. How many total? 37 so far, and they're still coming in every few minutes. Kelly's voice was strained. Dr. Morrison, 3 clients have already called to cancel their appointments today. Mrs. Patterson wants to know if the allegations about your psychiatric instability are true. I closed my eyes, feeling Linda's web of destruction tightening around me. Kelly, I need you to draft an email to all our clients. Explain that we're experiencing a targeted harassment campaign by someone trying to discredit the practice. Include links to legitimate reviews and my professional credentials. Already working on it. But Dr. Morrison, there's something else. A woman called this morning claiming to be from the state licensing board. Said they'd received multiple complaints about your unethical conduct and wanted to schedule an investigative interview. My blood went cold. Did you get a name? A callback number? Sarah Mitchell, but when I asked for her direct extension, she said she'd call back later and hung up. Kelly paused. I called the Real Licensing Board afterward. They have no record of any complaints against you, and no employee named Sarah Mitchell. Linda wasn't just trying to destroy my reputation anymore, she was impersonating state officials. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She was completely unhinged, operating without any regard for legal consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk enjoying your morning reading? This is just the beginning. You have until noon to call Principal Torres and recant your testimony. Otherwise, tonight I start calling every client in your database. Amazing what information people leave in their voicemails when they think no one's listening. L asterisk. I screenshot the message immediately. Finally, Linda had made a direct threat in writing. But the mention of client voicemails made my hands shake. She was talking about accessing confidential patient information. Dr. Patricia Reeves called at 9:15 a.m. Jessica, I've been monitoring this situation online. This is clearly a coordinated attack designed to destroy your professional credibility. Patricia, she's threatening to contact my clients directly. She mentioned listening to voicemails somehow. That would be a massive HIPAA violation, possibly a federal crime. But Jessica, I'm worried about your safety. This level of escalation suggests someone who's completely lost touch with reality. At 11:47 a.m., 13 minutes before Linda's deadline, Rebecca Walsh called with terror in her voice. Dr. Morrison, she knows. Linda knows I came to see you yesterday. Rebecca was whispering, like she was hiding. She called my principal in Portland 20 minutes ago. Told him I have a history of making false accusations against colleagues and that he should be very careful about my influence on students. Rebecca, where are you right now? Locked in my classroom. Dr. Morrison, she somehow got my personnel file from Riverside. She knows about every complaint I filed, every witness statement I gave. She told my principal I was fired for cause from Riverside, which isn't true, but she has documentation that looks official. The scope of Linda's preparation was staggering. She'd been building ammunition for years, collecting information, creating false documents. Rebecca, the DA meeting is still on for this afternoon. We can't let her intimidation tactics. No. Rebecca's voice cracked. I can't do this. I have a daughter, Dr. Morrison. Linda sent me a photo this morning of my daughter's school, with the message beautiful campus. I hope nothing disrupts such a peaceful learning environment. The line went quiet except for Rebecca's labored breathing. I'm sorry, she whispered. I can't help you anymore. I'm too scared of what she might do. After Rebecca hung up, I sat alone in my office, staring at Linda's text message. Noon had come and gone. My phone was ringing constantly with reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the controversy surrounding the Morrison case. At 12:23 p.m., my phone buzzed with another message from Linda. Asterisk time's up, Jessica. Hope you're ready for the consequences of your choices. Asterisk. By 1 p.m., she'd started making good on her promise. My first client of the afternoon was supposed to be Marcus, but his father called to cancel. Dr. Morrison, I'm sorry, but someone contacted my wife claiming to be from Child Protective Services. They said there were concerns about Marcus's therapy sessions, that his therapist might be compromised. We know it's probably nonsense, but we can't take any chances. 3 more cancellations followed within the hour. Linda was systematically calling my clients, using official-sounding titles and just enough psychological terminology to plant seeds of doubt. She wasn't just destroying my reputation anymore, she was actively sabotaging the treatment of vulnerable children. At 2:17 p.m., my office phone rang. The caller ID showed Riverside Elementary. Jessica, this is Margaret Walsh from the school board. Her voice was tight with concern. I'm calling because we've received some disturbing information about your testimony Friday night. My stomach plummeted. What kind of information? Someone claiming to be a former colleague of yours contacted 3 board members this morning. She provided what appeared to be documentation suggesting you've had multiple psychiatric hospitalizations and a history of making false allegations against authority figures. Margaret, that's completely fabricated. Linda is running a systematic campaign to discredit. I understand that's your position. But Dr. Morrison, we also received copies of what appear to be academic records showing a pattern of psychological instability during your graduate studies. The room tilted. Linda had somehow obtained or forged documents detailed enough to fool school board members. Margaret, I can provide legitimate documentation of my mental health history and academic record. Everything you've received is falsified. I hope that's true. Because if these documents are authentic, it calls into question everything you testified about Friday night. Margaret's tone grew more formal. Dr. Morrison, the board is meeting an emergency session Thursday night to review this new information. You'll have the opportunity to present evidence in your defense. After she hung up, I realized Linda's strategy with horrifying clarity. She wasn't just trying to destroy me personally, she was trying to get my testimony thrown out so her termination would be overturned. If she could prove I was mentally unstable when I testified, she might actually get her job back. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Asterisk having a productive afternoon? Wait until you see what I have planned for tonight. Remember, you brought this on yourself. Asterisk. At 4:33 p.m., Kelly knocked on my door with wide, frightened eyes. Dr. Morrison, there's a man here from the state medical board. He says there's been a complaint filed about your prescribing practices and he needs to inspect your files immediately. Kelly, I don't prescribe medication. I'm not a psychiatrist. I told him that, but he says the complaint alleges you've been practicing outside your scope of license. She lowered her voice. He looks official, badge, official paperwork, but something feels wrong. Through my office window, I could see a middle-aged man in a cheap suit rifling through Kelly's desk drawers. When he noticed me watching, he held up what appeared to be a search warrant. I called the state medical board while watching him work. This is Dr. Jessica Morrison. Someone claiming to represent your office is here demanding access to my files. Dr. Morrison, we have no record of any investigation involving your practice. And we wouldn't send investigators without advance notice and proper documentation. Can you verify if this search warrant is legitimate? I read the document number to the representative. That's not one of our case numbers, doctor. I'd suggest calling the police immediately. As I hung up, the fake investigator was photographing client files that Kelly had been forced to produce. Confidential information about traumatized children was being systematically documented by someone working for Linda. Stop. I rushed out of my office. You have no legal authority to be here. Those files are confidential. The man looked up calmly. Ma'am, I have a valid warrant. Interfering with an official investigation is a felony. Then you won't mind waiting while I verify your credentials with the actual medical board. His expression shifted slightly, a flicker of uncertainty. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back and allow me to complete my work. I pulled out my phone, making a show of dialing. 911? I need police at 1247 Medical Plaza immediately. Someone is impersonating a state official and accessing confidential medical records. The man was already packing up his camera, moving toward the exit with surprising speed. This investigation will be rescheduled for a more convenient time, he said, practically running for the door. As his footsteps faded down the hallway, I realized Linda had just crossed a line that even she might not be able to uncross. Impersonating government officials, attempting to steal protected medical information, creating false documents to deceive public officials, these weren't just harassment tactics anymore. They were federal crimes. And I finally had the evidence I needed to stop her. The police arrived at my office within 12 minutes, and Officer Martinez recognized me immediately. Dr. Morrison, this is the same Linda Morrison from your harassment complaint? It has to be. She's escalated to impersonating federal officials and attempting to steal confidential patient records. I handed him my phone with screenshots of Linda's threatening texts. Officer Martinez, I think we finally have enough for criminal charges. Detective Sarah Kim arrived 20 minutes later, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in stalking cases. After reviewing the evidence, the fake online reviews, the impersonation attempts, the forged documents, and the attempted theft of medical records, her expression grew increasingly serious. Dr. Morrison, what you're describing is a coordinated campaign of criminal harassment. The impersonation of state officials alone is a felony. She closed her notepad. We're going to bring Ms. Morrison in for questioning tonight. They found Linda at 8:47 p.m., parked outside my condo building with a telephoto camera and a laptop full of surveillance photos. When they searched her car, they discovered printed client lists from my practice, forged letterheads from multiple state agencies, and detailed notes about my neighbors' schedules. The arrest was surprisingly anticlimactic. According to Officer Martinez, Linda went quietly, maintaining her innocence and insisting she was protecting children from an unstable therapist. Even in handcuffs, she was trying to control the narrative. But the real turning point came during her interrogation. Detective Kim played Linda's own recorded voice from Rebecca's faculty meeting recordings, the ones where she described 7-year-old students as hopeless and defective. Faced with her own words, Linda's carefully constructed facade finally cracked. Those children were problems, she said, her voice cold and matter of fact. Someone had to tell the truth about their limitations. I was doing their parents a favor by setting realistic expectations. Detective Kim pressed further. Mrs. Morrison, you told 8-year-old Michael Park he didn't deserve food. How was that helping him? Michael Park was manipulative. He used tears to avoid accountability. Linda's tone remained steady, completely devoid of empathy. If his parents were too weak to teach him discipline, someone had to. The interview continued for 47 minutes, with Linda systematically defending every act of psychological abuse as necessary teaching. She showed no remorse, no recognition that her actions had traumatized children. Instead, she painted herself as the victim of overly sensitive parents and ungrateful students. When Detective Kim asked about her harassment campaign against me, Linda's mask slipped entirely. Jessica needed to learn consequences for betraying family. I raised her, I made her successful, and she repaid me by destroying my career. Everything I did was justified. Including impersonating federal officials? Stealing confidential medical records? I was protecting other children from being damaged by someone who's clearly mentally unstable. Linda looked directly into the camera. My daughter has serious psychological problems, and parents deserve to know that before trusting her with their children. The interrogation ended with Linda being charged with 6 felonies: stalking, criminal impersonation, attempted theft of protected information, witness intimidation, filing false police reports, and criminal harassment. The district attorney indicated that additional charges related to child psychological abuse were likely. 3 months later, Linda Morrison pled guilty to 4 felony counts in exchange for a sentence of 18 months in prison and 5 years probation. The plea agreement included a permanent restraining order and a lifetime ban from working with children in any capacity. But the most satisfying moment came during her sentencing hearing, when Judge Patricia Santos read a statement from Emma Chen, now 8 years old and thriving in her new classroom. Mrs. Morrison made me think I was stupid and bad. But Dr. Jessica helped my mommy understand that wasn't true. I'm not stupid. I'm just learning. Sitting in that courtroom, listening to Emma's words read aloud, I finally understood the answer to the question that had started this entire nightmare: what types of bad parenting do kids not recover from? The answer wasn't about specific techniques or severity of abuse. It was about whether anyone ever stepped forward to say, this was wrong. You didn't deserve it. You are worthy of love. Some children recover because someone, a teacher, a therapist, a friend's parent, becomes the voice that contradicts the damage. They learn that their abuser's version of reality was distorted, that their worth isn't conditional, that love doesn't have to be earned through perfection. Linda Morrison spent decades telling children they were flawed, stupid, worthless. But she was wrong about all of them, including the 7-year-old girl I used to be. And sometimes, that's all it takes to begin healing, one person willing to speak the truth.